over here for a minute. This is section 2, part 2. Present lie. Present lie. Charismatic cult leader comes to a group of people and he says to them, you all heard God speak. And they say, we all heard God speak. And then they tell their kids, we all heard God speak. And they tell their kids, our parents heard God speak. And they tell their kids, our grandparents heard God speak. And you end up with a chain going down through history of people saying, right, our ancestors heard God speak. That perfectly matches the sociological reality. So you see, the present lie, right, fits the facts on the ground. Okay. Small problem with present lies as follows. I'm going to propose a theory which I call Applewhite theorem. I'm going to use one of the most famous modern cults in history to demonstrate this, but you can look at any religion on the planet and they all conform to Applewhite theorem. There was a charismatic cult leader who went to a group of people in California. His name was Marshall Applewhite. Went to a group of people in California, in Rancho Santa Fe, very wealthy neighborhood. And he said to them, you don't have to live these lives of quiet desperation. There's a better place, a place we can all go, a place called heaven. And you can follow me to heaven if you'll just come with me through Heaven's Gate. And he named his group Heaven's Gate. In his first revelation, which he told to dozens of people in Rancho Santa Fe, he explained that to pass through Heaven's Gate, you must be wearing black Nike tennis shoes. And literally dozens of people, we're talking 40 people, put on black Nike tennis shoes and wore them 24/7. Okay. He gathered an enormous amount of money from these people. He rented a fantastic mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, and several months later called his next meeting. At the second meeting, he explained that the men are going to have a much more difficult time passing through Heaven's Gate than the women, because there's a particular piece of male anatomy you cannot possess when you pass through Heaven's Gate. He passed out X-Acto blades and chloroseptic spray. The people sprayed themselves with topical anesthetic, the men did. They took the X-Acto blades and they removed that particular piece of male anatomy. Marshall Applewhite himself did not perform the castration because he said he had to wait till later, which makes perfect sense to me. They sewed themselves up with tooth floss and the cult continued. Several months later, Marshall Applewhite called the group together again. All but 2 of the cult members made it to this final meeting of the cult. At the final meeting of the cult, which actually lasted 3 days, Marshall Applewhite explained that the spaceship, which is coming to pick us up, has arrived. And in order to ascend, all you have to do is take this lethal dose of phenobarbital, and after you pop the pills, tie a hefty plastic trash bag around your neck and over your head, and you will ascend. Then, in waves over 3 days, these people on video declared their faith in Marshall Applewhite, popped the pills, tied the plastic trash bags, laid down and died. After each wave had committed suicide, the people who were still alive cleaned up the mess and placed their bodies on these beds. And then finally, with only 3 people left, Marshall Applewhite and 2 ladies, Marshall Applewhite committed suicide, and then the 2 ladies committed suicide as well, and the story ended. Or at least the story should have ended. What actually ended up happening was this became one of the premier research projects in the study of cults. The 2 great centers for the study of cults in America are Princeton University and University of California, San Diego, which is 20 minutes from Rancho Santa Fe. So they sent out a team, they researched, they took pictures, and they began to look at the histories of these individuals. And what they found was that the people in the group were entirely stable psychologically before they joined the cult. After they joined the cult, the relatives said they became raving lunatics, but before they joined the cult, they were perfectly stable. None of them were in financial crisis, none of them had psychological or psychiatric histories. We're talking about, and they were all financially well off, right? Everybody, and many of them had advanced degrees, they were university students. We're talking about a highly intelligent, psychologically stable, financially stable group of people who join a cult, lose their minds, and act crazy, and then eventually commit suicide. When you hear this story, you say, bizarre. How could any intelligent person have done something like this? After all people who join crazy cults are crazy. But the reason you think that, probably, is because you have never been in a cult. But if you would go to visit a cult's meetings, right, and many of these groups have open meetings that you can go and visit, you will discover something fascinating, which is that although there might be crazy people who try to get into the introductory meetings of these cults, but the cult leaders are not interested in them. The people who the cult leaders are most interested in are the people who are financially stable, who are doing well in life. And those are the people who get the most attention, who get recruited, and who end up staying in the cults. So for example, like one of the biggest cults in America today, and one of those that gets the most press is Scientology. Yeah? So who do we have here? We've got Tom Cruise, yeah, John Travolta, yeah, Madonna is in the Kabbalah Center, right? You do have these people who seem to be very, very successful in life and are very, very well put together, and yet are believing the most crazy things in the world. I mean, you start to look at what Scientologists believe, it is absolute insanity. L. Ron Hubbard did astral travel. He soared up into the heavens with no spaceship, right? Discovered all of these truths, lost power, crashed into a desert island, broke his back, had a tape recorder there, thank God, so he could record all the truths. Right? You could buy the tape if you're in one of the advanced classes, right? I mean, like crazy things these people believe. How can they believe such things? So the answer is Applewhite theorem. Applewhite theorem is, and you'll see if you go and you look at world religions and modern cults, they all conform to Applewhite theorem. Applewhite theorem has two clauses. The first clause is, people are gullible and will believe anything, even something that asks them to act self-destructively. Right? This is the hole in the human psyche, which is the vulnerability which enables people to fall into religions, cults. People are gullible, they'll believe anything, even something that asks them to act self-destructively. Clause B, as long as the lie cannot be checked. People are gullible, they'll believe anything, even something that asks them to act self-destructively, as long as the lie cannot be checked. Now, what do I mean? They'll believe this as long as the lie cannot be checked. Watch this. Why didn't Marshall Applewhite say, the spaceship that dropped your mother off here is coming to pick us up? You call your mother. It's over. Right? As soon as your mother said it's a cult, you would have said to your friend, call your mother. Call your mother. In 15 minutes, it's over. Right? Why didn't he say, the spaceship that dropped your grandmother off here is coming to pick us up? Because you can check. Even if your grandmother's not alive anymore, you can ask your mother, Mom, you ever hear anything about a spaceship from Grandma? Yeah? The thing will go up in smoke instantly. They always tell a lie that cannot be checked because people are stupid, but they're not that stupid. If they can check the lie, they will. Now, charisma, from a psychological perspective, is what I would call a weak force. What do I mean it's a weak force? Charisma will continue to draw somebody into a cult as long as there's no strong force, like a factual contradiction, which blows you out of the cult. So as long as you're exposed to someone like L. Ron Hubbard, or, by the way, you know what L. Ron Hubbard did for a living before he became the leader of Scientology? He was a science fiction writer. Yeah? He's a great writer. Marshall Applewhite had started 2 cults previously. If you can watch videos of him, he's incredibly charismatic. Charisma will draw somebody in as long as you say things like, the spaceship is coming to pick us up, take the phenobarbital. Can you check that? Right? Hi, my name is Paul, and I just met Jesus on the road to Damascus. Can you check that? Hi, my name is Muhammad, and I just had a prophetic experience. Can you check that? Hi, my name is Joe Smith Jr., and I just found golden tablets, which I destroyed, but here's the transcript. Can you check that? Every religion on the planet starts with a lie which is uncheckable, in which case, as long as there's enough charisma on the side of the cult leader, the thing will fly. Okay, now, we've discovered what is the psychological weakness, the vulnerability, which allows people to be dragged into a cult. By the way, I believe, this is a drop sobering, until you are aware of Applewhite theorem, you are in danger of falling into a cult. Because you hear somebody very charismatic, it makes a lot of sense, and you say, yeah, maybe it's all true. And it feels right. And that's how highly intelligent people get swept into stupidity. Once you're aware of Applewhite theorem, you can protect yourself. How does it work? You hear somebody saying something. The first question you've got to ask is, can I check what he's saying? If you cannot check what he's saying, I advise you, get up and walk out of the room. Leave, because you're in danger. All cults start with lies that are uncheckable. Okay, now, here is the small problem with present lie. If I came to you and I said to you, hi, I'm Moses, and I was with all of your grandparents when all of them heard God speak. Could you check that? Sure. If I came to you, in which case, if you could check it, the lie would not survive. If I came to you and I said to you, hi, my name is Moses, and I was with all of your parents when they all heard God speak, could you check that? Sure. In which case, the religion will not survive. I'm telling you a checkable lie. Tell me something. What's the most checkable lie? If I don't say it was your grandparents, if I don't say it was your parents, if I say it was you. You all heard just now. Didn't you hear that? God just spoke. He said, Kelemen is God. Didn't you all hear him say that? Okay, now, if I tell you that you heard God speak, do you have any friends who would believe me? Have you ever met such a human being? There's a popular theory bouncing around that it was because the claim was made in the desert and it was Moses yelling off of a rock. I took 2 groups of Yale students into the middle of the desert and I yelled off a rock. They still didn't buy it. Yeah? Megaphones, lightning, thunder, right? We don't know anybody who would fall for something this dumb. In my travels, I've lectured at universities all across the planet. In my travels, I have never met one mainstream university professor who proposes future theory. Because of what I mentioned before, it'll never produce the sociological phenomenon that we need. And I've never met a mainstream university professor who proposed present theory. And the reason is Applewhite theorem. People are stupid, but they're not that stupid. The only professor, the only PhD I've ever met who believed in present theory was the former head of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Seminary. It's a Jewish movement in America. I spent 2 summers with him. He told me he believes in present theory. I said, how do you get around Applewhite theorem? People are stupid, but they're not that stupid. He said, there's an easy way around it. I said, pray do tell. He says, isn't it true that Abraham tried to kill his favorite son, Isaac, the binding of Isaac? So if you open up the Torah, there is such a story. Abraham took Isaac, bound him. Isaac cooperated with the whole thing. He stuck out his neck for his father to slice. This man said to me, would any psychologically healthy person cooperate with the binding? Would he stick out his neck for his father to slice? Obviously, Abraham wasn't well, and he passed this disorder into his son Isaac. Isaac wasn't well. He passed this disorder into his son Jacob. Jacob passed this genetic disease into all of the tribes. By the time they got to Egypt, he said, it was an entire nation of retarded people. Moses said to them, you heard God speak, and they said, we heard God speak, and it was up and running. That's how it happened. So I said, Dr. Bronner, about you, I believe this theory. But could you explain to me how all the other descendants of the only known retarded nation in history win more Nobel Prizes per capita than anybody else on the planet? So he didn't like my joke. But you have to propose, in order to believe in present theory, you have to propose nation of retarded people. Because you have never met somebody who would believe something so stupid. If someone came to you and said, you heard God speak, no one would believe that. So people have all sorts of things. Well, they were escaped slaves. Yeah, so I don't know. First of all, right, the fact that someone is a slave or that they're escaped does not make them dumb. Yeah? And they escaped into a desert. Well, folks, all slaves escape into deserts. If they escape into the city, they're still imprisoned. Yes? Right? But there was a thunderstorm. Great. Ever met someone who's been in a thunderstorm? Yeah. There was a guy up at Hebrew University who for a period said that it was a national drug trip. They discovered in the desert something called ayahuasca. And he knows that ayahuasca could produce this sort of hallucination because he said he himself had gone down to South America and done ayahuasca on many occasions. And he experienced much of what is described in the Torah, that he heard voices. And so, first of all, he got fired. But beyond that, we don't have any record of a group of people all taking drugs and thinking they heard God say the same thing. We do have records of people all taking drugs and thinking they hear God, like Woodstock, yeah? But at Woodstock, no one could agree on what God said, yeah? You have all these people all saying, God said, I'm the Lord your God, you should have no other gods before me. Moses come to the mountain. There's no record of such a thing. We don't think that drugs can produce such a sociological phenomenon. The problem with the present lie is that people are stupid and they're not that stupid. If you come to people and you say to them, you all heard God speak, no one's going to believe you. Applewhite theorem.